Shall we start rolling through some of the fan views we've had? Al, do you want to
Yeah,
hit us with the first one? It'll give us some different names to talk about, and I'm guessing a few repeat names too.
yeah, no doubt. So, first one is from Tom Andrews, and he says, Mick Wayman springs to mind for me. Never a backward step. Took 3 defenders minimum to stop. Had a decent try scoring rate for and was decent for a prop too. Sadly, one hit with a Rovers retirement curse. Also, a shout out for Mossy Masoa, obviously. Good shout out. I know he's come home from hospital this week, which is fantastic news.
Yeah, great news for Mossy and Mick Wayman. I remember mostly for punching Liam Farrell.
How dare he?
What I mean. Why would you hurt my ginger prince? Why would you try and touch him? Because he wanted a speckle of gold on his knuckles, didn't he? That's basically where we're going. But Wayman kind of came to the Super League in his early 30s with Hull KR, but had a reasonably solid, if not very consistent, NRL career. But his best spell was with that St George side that won the grand final down there in 2010. So yeah, that's the name there. And Big Mossy. I mean, Mossy won the grand final with St Helens. Probably one of those guys that you would expect to have been hampered by the interchange rules, but actually he still was a solid contributor in his final season at Hull KR last year, as well. A real sort of throwback to that massive prop.
Yes.
POB at Pob the Viking, Paul O'Brien, of course we know him better as. So we had the view of Hull KR forwards. We've now got the Widnes forwards. So he says Kurt Sorensen was one of the best I've seen for Widnes. And he said other great players in the modern game: Jamie Peacock, Adrian Morlin, Sam Burgess. So yeah, the Kiwi Kurt Sorensen. I think he came over maybe as a back rower. I don't know, but one of the greats of that late 80s Widnes side, the Cup Kings kind of side, Al.
Yeah, he's for me, he's, along with kind of Jonathan Davis and kind of Martin Offiah, they kind of Lydon, I suppose, to an extent, kind of defines that team for me. That black and white jersey with ICI logo on the front. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's really evocative of that period. And he was an old fashioned, no nonsense kind of player for me. Yeah, great player.
Rugged.
Yes.
Yeah, a rugged kind of guy. Even like when you just look at a picture of him, like every picture of that era where he's holding a trophy in a Widnes shirt, you look and you think he's not took a backward step for all that game. He always looks, his shirt almost always looks like it don't fit him quite anymore because it's been stretched or ripped, or there's been a fight if he's been involved, sort of thing, like a real scrap in the middle.
Absolutely, yeah. That's a fantastic shout as a pick.
Who we got next?
So Karsten says for his club, Jordan McLean, but overall he wants to pick out Matt Scott, which is a good shout. And then for Super League, he just says the Saints front row, but yeah, we know that.
So currently he's talking about Jordan McLean, obviously, who came through at Melbourne and has now maybe matured into a rep player over the last couple of years. But Matt Scott is from his team, so why would he not be his favourite of his team? I don't understand.
Maybe because he's slightly past his prime. Maybe.
Well, he's retired now, hasn't he? I think he retired last year. But I heard you sort of chip in with a sort of sound of appreciation and agreement on Matt Scott there, John, as well. That sort of Matt Scott James Tamau combination was a fearful one back in the Cowboys' heyday.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, and going back to props punching, James Tamau got knocked down by Mitch Garbutt of all people in the World Club Challenge, didn't he? Because the international rules are slightly different.
Yeah, they were allowed to throw a punch, and the Aussie players still thought that you weren't allowed to throw a punch, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Matt Scott was definitely an outstanding
He
player.
was, yeah.
Over 20 times for Queensland and over 20 times for Australia tells you that, he was, and during that era as well, for Queensland as well, being one of the linchpins of that side during that era, that sort of turn of the kind of the first half of the teens of the 20 teens, it was an outstanding Queensland side that he was pretty much a mainstay in. So yeah, great shout from Karsten there, definitely. Neil McEwen at Neil McEwen 4600. He also gave another shout out for Kurt Sorensen. He said Kurt Sorensen for Widnes was the best I've seen, and he also said Barrie McDermott was good for Leeds. He just put his head down and went for it. Plus, you were always guaranteed the biff winking face emoji.
Bring back the biff.
Well, Barry mentioned about kind of the fans do. He feels like he likes a bit of the rough stuff. Maybe, not all out, balls out violence, maybe, but the rough stuff, and you don't want to sanitize that out of the game because it's kind of the popularity. I agree as a fan. It gets the crowd up. So what do you guys think then, John? What do you think about players like Barry who would, not be backwards when it came to coming forwards if they needed to scrap? And do you think we want to retain an element of that in our game without being seen as too much the thuggish code?
Yeah, definitely. I'm the same as everybody else who really, really enjoy it, and that aggression and that sort of confrontational aspect of the game is a big part of why we love rugby league. I think going back not even that many years, but I don't think that it's a good look for the sport when you've got guys just punching each other in the face over and over again, because it doesn't do much for the kids' game when the kids want to go and play and their parents see this happening. They're not going to encourage their kids to join that sport and grow the game. So again, it's a fine line, isn't it? The shoulder charge is another one that everyone calls. A lot of people want back and want to see that back in the sport and things like that. But it's incredibly dangerous, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's it. We take out the pure violent danger and condemn rightly things like the Ben Flower moment, but then at the same time, where there's a mutual bit of fight going on, and most of the time when all the players come in, none of them can land a clean hit on each other anyway because it's too much of a kerfuffle.
Yeah.
But there's a mix in there between aggression and physicality and balls out violence and risk to players' health, I suppose. Where do you fall on that line? I kind of feel let's get as close as we can to the violence without getting to a cheap shot or a Ben Flower moment, or But where do you stand on that scale?
See, I kind of. There was a clip this week of Adrian Morley when he was playing for the Roosters, basically battering a couple of West Tigers players, I think. And they were, it would be, it'd be kind to say they were shoulder charges. They were basically assaults in no other, in no other term. And I don't miss that that's gone.
Yeah.
I enjoy a player being cut in half by a textbook tackle as much as I enjoy, a shoulder charge. I don't think I miss the biff, to be frank. I think it's a relic of a bygone time, and I think the game is better without it, to be frank.
Fair enough. That's
fair enough. Yeah.
All different views. Yeah. Good stuff. Who's next?
So Barney said at Baton Hall Blue said Brian Case was the best of his generation for Warrington and then Wigan. I remember when Les Boyd signed for Warrington.
If we're talking about the bygone age of the biff, we're talking about some pure biff names there.
Yes, there's some old-fashioned things here. Great player, but a proper thug. Remember him simultaneously battering Sean Edwards and Andy Gregory, one with each hand in a game at Wilderspool. Hated him.
Here we've got the history lesson and full rounded view from Joshua's granddad. Sarah's not here this week to read John's thing out, so I'm going to have to add the punctuation in for us instead. So John said, old school props from when they played full 80 minutes through ankle deep mud, the likes of Brian McTeague, Cliff Watson, Mike Harrison, Don Poor Boy Fox. And then into the 70s and 80s, you got the likes of Brian Lockwood, Vince Farrer, whose signing kick-started the FC revival, Kevin Ward, Lee Crooks, Jeff Grayson, who I think played against his own son in a game between Bradford and Featherstone. Wow! They said later years saw Barrie McDermott dropped for the 2005 Grand Final, costing Leeds the Cup. Jamie Peacock and the salary cap Wigan breaching but saving Stuart Fielden. Then current stars Walmsley and Thompson at Saints. Watts, who in brackets he says is the best in the league according to his dad. And then he gives a shout out for Scott Taylor, of course, who he says carried the FC pack after Watts left. Then the man who created the 10-minute cameo prop, Fecker, Iafeta Palliacina. Hardmen over the years, Jim Mills, Tim Street, Knuckles Greenhill came with a rep not seen until he battered Barry Ward at Saints, and wannabe hardman Ben, I'll smack the unconscious guy, Flower. So,
Knuckles Greenhill. What a name.
We'll skip the latter end of that and focus more on the early end, I suppose. Al, I don't know if there's any of those names, those sort of legacy names from Brian McTeague through to Jeff Grayson that have any particular resonance with yourself.
I think John's right about Jeff Grayson playing against his son. I think that's right, but yeah, no, there's a lot of names.
To be honest, he's a very knowledgeable rugby league fan. And if we could understand what he said as much as what he can write, then we'd have him on the show alongside his daughter. But we've got the one who can eloquently explain things from the family. But I'll tell you what, he gives us a history lesson every week at the moment, doesn't he?
Absolutely, yeah. No, it's really useful. I mean, the one name that it kind of overlaps with my era is Lee Crooks as a player. You know, we talk about goal kickers. I remember Lee. My memory is Lee Crooks at Cass, which I know is after he left Hull.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, for me, he was another one of those players you never saw him with a pristine shirt. So yeah, he always put a shift in.
I think we've got a bit more on Kevin Ward to come. So Brian McTeague, he's a Wigan Hall of Famer for the club. So that's a great shout out in terms of the history names there. I think he played in the front row for Wigan, and him and Ken G are the two kind of like prop forward names of yesteryear that Wigan fans all know and are aware of. Cliff Watson, in my research I found out Cliff Watson is him and Brian McTeague seem to be the guys who played the most games for Great Britain started the most games for Great Britain in the front row. So obviously two legends of the game there. Cliff Watson was a St Helens player predominantly as well there, and I think Brian Lockwood, did he win a Man of Steel? Am I making that up? But yeah, some great names there. And then in the newer names, he threw in Fecker Palliacina, who was the only Wigan player that any Wigan fan liked for the first half of the 2006 season before we signed Stuart Fielden to compliment him in that front row. So yeah, there you go. David Powell at St David 2911. He said, from Australian Glenn, the brick with eyes, Lazarus was a monster prop. Yeah, he played in that 94 game against Neil Cowie, who stood up well to him actually in that game. But yeah, former Brisbane player there, Glenn Lazarus. Kurt Sorensen was brutal too. For Saints, the best I have seen are Kevin Ward and Jammer Graham. If I'd have to pick one, it would be Wardy. What an engine. Tragic that his career ended with his broken leg. Yeah, I was reading up about this because it's before my time, Al, but he broke his leg in a Good Friday derby against Wigan I believe that ended his career. But James Graham, the first proper shout-out we've had for James Graham amongst all of this. I know, John, you mentioned him as well as kind of being one of those frustrated halfbacks. But James Graham, do we think he kind of played a big part in evolving the position, do you think, John?